Okay, Pete Gustis here at the Commercial Industrial Council meeting of Berks County R-Bar with our sponsor, West Reading Subway. And our guest speaker today is going to be Fred Sheeler, Recorder of Deeds. West Reading Subway does party platters, breakfast platters for offices and businesses. Support West Reading Subway. All right, Pete Gustis here, Commercial Industrial Council meeting with Fred Sheeler, Recorder of Deeds. Take it away, Fred.
Okay, thank you. And thanks for having me here today. I'd like to show you how you can use the county website to find out various different property information. Starting with how do you find out something about a property if you don't even know who owns it or what its real address is. So I don't know how many of these things you might have stumbled across or might even be using for years, but I do know every so often I come across people in the profession who don't even know the county has any of this stuff online. So I think it's good to show it. So our website is countyofberks.com, and this is just a general homepage. And you'll see up here a list of the county departments. So I'm going to start with the mapping office. We go to the mapping office, and that has a couple different services right off the bat. They have called the Interactive GIS Web Parcel Viewer and Parcel Search, and then you can actually get into the more detailed tax maps. But you have to always keep in mind these things were created for tax records. They're not exact surveys. You couldn't use them for boundary line disputes or to say where property actually, well, generally where it lies, but not its exact location and boundary lines. So let me go to the Parcel Search first, because that's pretty much the basic. There's always a disclaimer on these things. It's basically telling you what I just said. It's not an exact survey. Okay. And some of these things you'll see as pretty basic on some of these websites because they haven't been updated for many years. And we're in the process of bidding out for a new computer system for the assessment office and the mapping and the tax claim and all those things to kind of pull it all together into one and make it more modern. This system, except for this web application here, all this data resides on an old IBM AS400 mainframe, which is like the next step up from tubes in a computer. If anybody knows what tubes are anymore, I say that to younger people now. Tubes. So here, if you know the person's name and you want to find out, what do they own, you just type in a last name and a first name. Click the go. And click it. There. Okay. And I'll bring up a list of properties under my name. And then this is the real important number here is the parcel or property ID number. That's the unique number for that property. Tells you basically what municipality it's in the first two digits. And the rest is a geographic code. Corresponds to like longitude, latitude, and things like that to find it on a map. Whenever a document is submitted to my office now, Recorder of Deeds, since the beginning of January, we require that number to be on it. And then we index that number in our records, and as soon as we have more time under our belt building up the database of those numbers, that'll be accessible as a search criteria. Just type in that number and see everything that's been recorded against that particular property by this number since January 2nd of this year. You still have to do the old searching method for before that, which is basically the owner's names and the prior owner's name and the prior owner's names to get a complete search. So that's why going to this numbering system, it eliminates all that. And then you don't have to worry about misspellings of names. Because that's a common thing that happens, where you think you're finding everything on a property owner, but there was something under a different version of that person's name. So if you go into the record, you click that little icon on the end, it'll bring up a tax card, basically. It has the basic information. This isn't everything that's in the assessment file. But it'll have the mailing address, so a lot of times that's helpful. You want to find out, well, who really owns it, you know, do they live there, or is it a commercial property? Where do you send them a letter? You can look here. It'll give you information if there's a subdivision plan file for that. That'll give you a true and accurate survey, at least at that point in time when it was done. So it'll give you a recording reference. That's in my office, a book and a page number of a subdivision plan. It'll give you the deed recording information. In this case, it's an older deed, so it has a 4-digit book and a 4-digit page number. That's also in my records, I'll show you. And the date of the deed, how much was paid, but you can't always believe that, because that's not the right way. But 2 properties. So sometimes I can be a wheeler dealer too. This was in Hamburg, and I had a mortgage business for years and years in Hamburg. And there was this building next door to my office that was always run down, and there was a carpet business in it. And he had an ugly dumpster there right near, and it would blow into my car once in a while. And when it came up for sale, I thought, well, I can buy that, fix it up, and make that dumpster go away. You know, it was one of my main reasons to buy it. But it came with a already subdivided lot behind it. And right about that time, I had heard that the, well, it was Vist Bank, but it was Leesport Bank, was going to tear down a house next to their office and make their parking lot bigger and add on to the side of the building. So I bought that building and had it moved to this lot and reconstructed. So then I sold it. So when I bought the 2, I pushed a lot more of the value towards that back lot. So then when I sold it, I didn't have quite as much gain when I sold it. But when I finally sell this, I'll have a bigger gain. It'll get me one day. So then it'll give you like information about, is it a commercial building, how it's taxed, that type of thing. I don't know how many residential things you do, but that's the homestead status line. And whenever somebody calls me saying, I need to find out this, that, and the other thing, and I have to pull that up, I always look at that because I'm surprised how many people, it's their primary residence and they never applied for the homestead exemption. So they're missing out on maybe a couple $100 of lower school taxes.
I have a question. On occasion, I've seen where, let's say, 2 properties were sold at the same time by the same buyer to the same seller, and they were sold for, let's say, a package price of $225,000. But in reality, it's really 125 and, you know, and 100.
Right. And
yet it shows up in the public records as each one of them was $250,000 or $225,000. So it's being, the information,
well,
there's a
yeah,
disconnect.
but you gotta understand the difference in what the public record is. This is just showing you here that transferred, if it was, say, one deed with a couple different properties on it that they.
Well, not one deed, I'm talking about 2 entirely different addresses.
2 entirely different deeds? No, that should never happen.
Well, it happens, and it happens, I mean, I don't know if anybody else has seen it. But
I've seen it. Usually it's like, it will say, a lot of times it'll say like blanket mortgage or something like that.
Are you
Well,
talking
yeah.
about what you see in the trend system?
What we see in the trend system
Okay.
under public records.
All right. Trend system is a compilation of the public record.
Right.
Never trust it.
Right.
It is wrong many, many times, and we get the calls saying, public record says this, my agent said, you know, I don't own this house. Look it up, everything's perfectly fine.
Right.
The last one I tracked down was a house on Slater Drive in South Heidelberg Township, was mistaken for a house in Trend for Slate Run Road in like Amity Township. Same house number, but Slater versus Slate Run. Trend said, well, that Slater Drive was sold. It was never sold. Slate Run was sold. So Trend has a problem with matching up all the different counties that they're pulling together. and trying to, they buy different bits and pieces of information and put it into their system. So that is not the public record.
So it'd be interesting then for me to pull one of those oopses and see if they're
Yeah,
getting the
and look at
information
here.
from here, if it's been recorded wrong
Yeah.
somehow. And I can see where it would happen, because, you've got, the agreement of sale says 225, everything says 225, but it's really not
Yeah.
225 and 225,
Right. They
it's some
have, but when they
compilation.
submit the deed to us to record, if they have a transaction like that, they must split that apart. Each deed
That
that
would
we
come
have,
from the
unless
title
it's all on
company.
one deed. They can give us one deed for multiple properties, multiple parcels, with one price, as long as they're all in one municipality, and we just record it, because it doesn't mean anything else to us. With the tax that we collect, the transfer tax goes to one municipality. If that would be one of those multiple properties and it was over the border of two townships, or a borough and a township, they would have to spell out how much is in this township, how much is in that township, where does the tax money go? But that is probably one of those glitches of trend buying this database that we have in an antiquated old computer system and it not manipulating the way they want to show it. So they're combining those things or showing it twice.
Question real quick, if you don't mind. Was there a time frame to update the computer system? You guys said you were reviewing it earlier,
Oh.
potentially?
Yeah, as much as I can push them to get this done,
I
and I
know.
don't have authority over that. When I first was elected a little over 5 years ago, our record system, which I'll show you, was really a terrible computer system. It was pretty recent, but it was just awful. You couldn't do anything with it. And by the end of that first year, by November of that year, I had brand new total conversion of a new computer system because I pushed and got it and did the various approvals to get it pushed through. But I wanted it, and I was the guy driving it. Unfortunately, our tax assessment and mapping department people are old school. Probably within 5 years of retirement, don't want any change at all if they can help it. So they're dragging their feet. So we have the commissioners pushing for it and the computer department pushing for it because they don't want to maintain this AS400 thing.
Yep.
But then you have that department who has to say, well, this is what we want, basically stalling and stalling and stalling. So I am anticipating at least 2 years. And then it'll be more updated, there'll be more information in here. I don't see why you can't see every single thing that's in that assessment file. It should be all public. It is really public record. If you went into the door and said, I want to see everything you have on this, they have to show it to you. But they'd only put bits and pieces on here. Like there's the year built, which don't go by that either for sure, because it's just a generalization. They were done, those years were put in, unless it was something built within the last 20 or so years. When they reassessed the entire county in the early 90s, the assessment company that they had just put, okay, it looks like it's 100 years old. So they put,
Maybe
they were in the right ballpark, okay? And really right now, the most that we get questions about age is either just curious people in their own house or stuff with lead paint, and you have to see the 78 year. Well, assessment won't add one more little block on here to show your bill. Why not? Whoa, we don't want it. So when the law was first passed that the home improvement people would have to find that out, it was a big deal, but it's kind of, I don't get any more calls. So apparently they're not doing it anymore, or they're just saying, oh, what do you think the year is? Tell me 1979.
Fred,
Yeah.
I see clean and green since.
Yeah.
Is that used? Is that a field that doesn't?
Yeah,
use
that
it?
one will show you if it's been in clean and green. I'm not, because this is a little postage stamp commercial building.
And how, what information is that something where there would be something recorded, like if there was a remediation plan with an environmental problem, And then
That would be
under act-
in the recorder of deeds records
Okay.
as a covenant or an easement.
Right,
And I'll show
okay.
you how you do that. Okay, what's gonna be nice about that, that's one of those things that goes overlooked in searches at times.
Mhm.
Because it's probably something that was given maybe by an owner years ago. There's one I stumbled across that is for the burial of radioactive waste in the area down below the old Dana plant.
Yes,
I guess it was American
Yes.
Chain and Cable.
yep, yep.
So I just stumbled across this when we were doing an indexing project, and I thought, well, we didn't have this ability to put the tax parcel ID number in yet, so we can associate our recorded documents to other documents. So I associated it to all the deeds since that time, because I thought, well, I just found this, stumbled across it, I think that's important. Luckily, they put is it a SunSuite plan or
Yeah,
water plan,
no, that's
something near
what-
there?
Yeah,
Well, that wasn't like right on top of radioactive waste, but, 100 years from now, who's gonna be thinking of
yeah.
that?
No, it's down the hill closer to the river.
Yeah, let
Yeah.
it run in there. Yeah. Hopefully they encapsulate it better.
Isn't that three-legged frog Bend?
Yeah, I think so.
Six-legged?
Now, say you don't know the address and you don't know who really owns it. So that's where you use this mapping system, and this is the GIS
Hmm.
maps. And again, they got a disclaimer. And then they'll give you a county map and a list of the municipalities. Trying to go down here to Spring. We're gonna pull up the Spring Township map. Now, how many of you have used, I'll wait till it pops up, have used this?
Not that.
Okay, this I think is pretty cool. Even though it is old school, there's much better mapping versions. But we use this a lot in our office because we'll have people come in and they want to know to contact a neighbor 3 doors down because something's going on, or even their next door neighbor who is a landlord and they don't know how to get it, and they don't know the name, but they know where it is. Usually not the next door neighbor because they would probably know that address, but there's some areas where you really don't know what the address is. So, but they can pick it up on a map. So this map here, first you gotta get your bearings straight or where you are, and
I should have turned the
I
lights
think-
off.
okay.
Should I turn it off?
No, that's okay. I wanna go here around Van Reed and State Hill Road to kind of get where we're sitting right now. So I know that's about where we are, so when you open this map, it's gonna default to the key up here, on the plus sign to zoom. And then later, you're gonna change it to I for identify to get the actual parcel. So we're gonna zoom in on, where's my spot there? And you're gonna keep, go up there.
Now, you can drag a rectangle over it and it'll zoom to that rectangle too.
Yeah, you can do that.
If you know where you're at.
Oops. That's not what I want. And I just lost my place. Quarry Drive. All right, now that you see these red dots, if that was zoomed in enough for you to pick on it, you could change to I and you click on one of those red dots. That means that's the center of that property, and that's gonna open up the record. But I wanna go a little bit farther in here. Cool. Okay, that's big enough. So I change it to I. Then, I don't know where are we, we're over maybe this one. Van Reed Group, LLC, that's 2209 Corey Drive.
Oh, so if you click on
This
this,
is
just
20.
gives you a listing at the bottom.
Actually, even if you zoom in one more or a little bit closer, the actual addresses do appear on the street.
Yeah, it does on the street, but this won't show you individual
usually
Like it
it
shows
does.
the quarry drive here. But it won't show you anything individual in here until you go into
Usually
each
it
record.
does.
On the parcel search one, it does.
Yeah,
When you
I-
pull up a map there.
The GIS.
What's that?
On the other one, on that other search thing, if you
Yeah.
pull up the map, there, if you zoom in close enough, it will show you the address number. I don't know if it does it on this.
I
or
thought
not.
it did.
I don't think it will do, until you open it up and this shows 22, I just clicked on 2211 Quarry Drive. And this is the 2211.
Yeah, that should be 2213.
Yeah, that's the 2213, that's the Grande LP property. So, say you were trying to find something, you, like I said, you don't know for sure who owns it. You wanna find the neighboring property, maybe a business wants to buy out a neighboring property and they don't know anything about it. This is how you can quickly find. And then it's gonna give you the same information here that was in that other type of record that was kind of like the card going up and down. It'll give you the acreage, the PIN number, a plan number, the deed reference recording information, and the owner's names, and whatever mailing address that they have to send tax bills. That will give you who you actually have to contact. There is more details on tax maps. Oops. Go back.
Other counties have the same kind of system,
Each county has their own.
but you can kind of get some
So you
information.
can find out who owns those vacant lots in their neighborhood.
Yeah,
I use both tools. You're gonna show us the tax map
Yeah.
specific? I use the one that he just showed us to identify the tax ID number. I can copy that and paste it into our property, public record search by tax ID number. And it'll bring up, our version or our view of the public records, as tainted as they might be.
I just
Useful,
put-
yet what I do when I bring that to a new client, I print it out, I say, well, this is what the system shows, it's an imperfect system, help me make sure it's right. Because I'm never gonna say, here's the answer, because you
Yeah.
just don't know.
and I don't know if it's certain agents or it's the people hearing them who
It
call us
happens.
and say,
Oh.
they told me that
Yeah.
this is what it is, and you
Right.
have this all wrong, and it's
Right.
right in all the records, it's just when it got compiled into trend, something got
Right.
put in the wrong person's.
And then the nice thing about
file.
this view is that it'll actually show you the measurements of the lot.
What the tax mappers
Those.
did in mass 20 years ago, that is,
Not
again,
survey.
not exact.
Right.
It's as close as they needed to be for taxing purposes.
Well, there's a disclaimer
Yeah.
in the first screen.
So,
Close.
in that parcel ID number, part of that has this map number. Okay, so you look at that parcel ID number, you go to where you see, oh yeah, there's that sequence of digits. And then you would just go through this whole list, and they're in numerical order, so you can quickly get to the one you want. Or put it in something to search. And then that'll bring up the actual tax map for that particular area. And there again, you have to, where's my zoom on here? It's a little different than what.
Can you just do the box?
Not on this one here. This one you can't do the box. This one, the last 6 digits of the tax ID number represent the longitude and latitude numbers on the chart there.
Oh, can you take them
And
to the
then
bottom?
once you zoom in, the last 4 digits represent the actual parcel ID.
Okay, where is this left?
Can you actually type them in?
Oh, hover in the middle of the screen. There you go.
Oh, there it is.
That's PDF file.
Yeah. Which is great and also a pain, because if you have a property that happens to
Under
extend
that.
between 2 tax ID numbers, you can't see the whole thing. You've gotta go to the next one down or to the right
That's
or
the
left.
Print them out and tape them
that's-
together.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Okay.
So you see as you get these in here, it will actually have,
Well, you can see
The
two of them from
distances.
that point of view.
they have one here, it's showing it's
Oh, you mean, but if it
29.06
goes to the
feet.
next-
It goes to the next map.
This way,
Yeah.
50 feet this way, so it gives
That
you
probably happens, what, half the time,
as
right?
close as approximation. That was based on compiling all the deeds. Well, when you do that, you're gonna have cases where you put this all together according to how their deeds were, and you're gonna have some gaps, you're gonna have some overlaps, so then they just kinda like ease those things out and do an approximation, because like I said, it's for taxing purposes. There's not a whole lot of difference in somebody's tax valuation if it is 0.55 acres or 0.5 acres.
What did the dotted lines represent
The,
in the middle of a parcel?
that usually indicates that there could be a subdivision plan on that, that could be lot 1 and lot 2 of a subdivision, but it hasn't been deeded apart yet. Then when it gets deeded, and maybe it's actually
Yeah,
sold
that's what I was
off,
thinking, you know.
then they'll go back and,
Because you
that's
can-
when they update the tax maps.
You read certain deeds and there's, you know, parcel 1, parcel 2.
Yeah, yeah, that's what those usually
Those are
indicate.
proposed more than anything,
Sometimes on here, you'll see
Maybe at some point it was cut up, now it isn't.
right?
you'll see areas that have no tax parcel. Like sometimes you'll see something that goes behind here, it might come out here, where it was laid out years ago in a subdivision to have a street, and the street was never dedicated or even built. But it's untaxed property, and what a lot of times people do is that goes for so many years, nobody's doing anything with it, and one of the property owners does a notice of quiet title and claims it and annexes it to their property. So that can be done. So you could sit there and go looking for these things, you know, and
They still have the paper street at the real property.
yeah. Now, when the tax maps were first issued, and they did the big mapping program for the reassessment in about 93, 94, a lot of people zoomed in on that, and they were out there doing quiet title actions for pretty good tracts of land. A lot of times, land locked up on a mountain or something like that. But they claim these things, thinking, oh, well, someday it's going to be worth something, you know, because it was just never mapped. And you know, when they did the old land warrants and grants, nobody claimed that, and the state lost track of it, and there it is, just sitting there, nothing, nobody owned it. That's when you'll see a quiet title action that names prior owners of William and John Penn. They'll be listed in the action in the deed. Okay. Now,
It's a handshake deal.
once you know what you're looking for and who you're looking for,
It's a meeting
that's
now.
when you want to go into the recorder of deeds site. That's what I can tell you all the ins and outs of. Okay. Now, we just added this here. How do I find the parcel ID number? Because since we instituted this procedure where every document gets filed by that number, the local document submitters, they knew about it right away and they were doing the right thing. But we get documents from all over the country, from the big banks and companies that work for the big banks, and they just can't seem to get this straight. Because they're dealing with thousands of counties. So we made it easy, step-by-step instructions, how do I find that number? But what you normally want to do is go to this second item right under home, search records online, register login. And then I always have their up-to-date instructions of what's really searchable at this point and how you search it. Everything, every document ever recorded in Berks is searchable on this website. That's deeds, mortgages, subdivision plans, miscellaneous documents, rights of way, easements, all that stuff. But there's two different ways. For most things going back 60 years, you just do your regular name search, type in the person's name, it's gonna show everything under that. If it's much older than that, like deeds before the 1948 era, you have to go to our index books, which are computerized, and you just type in a name, but it's gonna bring you up a picture of that page of the index book where those names are gonna be. And then you just gotta look down, scan the page to find the name that you're looking for, sometimes several pages. But everything can be located by one of those two types of indexes. And then we keep going back and entering older documents to build up the current index, because we figure people didn't really know how to use the index books that we had when they were still in paper format. Now they have an electronic version of the index books, but eventually, you're gonna say index book and no one's gonna know what you're talking about. So we wanna try to get that done. So, if you're new to this, you go down here and you create a new user account. It's free. You do have to enter some information. You have to enter a valid email address because to activate it, it's gonna email you a link. You gotta click on the link to activate your account. So let me just log in and show you
So,
what you can follow.
he was saying something about 1748 to 17. What do you do with old ones? In the ranges.
Oh. Oops. Okay, here we go. And I have a little disclaimer too. First thing pops up, we have this little pop-up if you're new to it, and we have this service called Fraud Sleuth. So if you go in and configure it and put your name in, various versions of your name, and your parcel ID numbers, it will send you an email if something gets recorded under your name or
Cool.
that
That's
parcel.
a great idea.
Yeah, that, we really
Yeah.
like that.
I just reading about some of the fraud going on
Yeah.
recently, yeah. That's
Now, we
great.
haven't had anything that I would really consider a fraud scheme like we heard about like in Philadelphia.
Yeah, down in Philly, yeah.
Something really bad in Philadelphia.
Well,
Where
I didn't.
their main
Steal a
thing that
house
was
by
happening
just saying
was
it's mine.
Yeah.
low-priced houses. An owner might be going into a nursing home or rehab home, and the intake person there was in on a scheme where they would give those names and addresses of those people that they had like no contact, no friends, no family, nobody that would like know something's going on. And they'd sell their house for pennies to some unsuspecting poor person. And then this person would get out and come back and somebody's in their house. And had, their stuff was thrown away, so it was pretty nasty. But it always had to be like some kind of insider thing where somebody knew a lot about that person to do it.
Oh, yeah.
And they don't publish, because it's, so many transfers, they don't publish them in the newspaper like they do here. So like here, if your Aunt Florence's house got sold and she's in the home and, she didn't sell her house, I would have known that. You'd see it in the newspaper, So maybe that's another reason they don't try it around here. So the main thing you're going to do is click on here, search public records. I have a couple more options because I'm set up to do e-recording. And right now we get roughly on a slow day, 65% of our new recording documents through electronic filing, e-recording. And the last couple days, it's been over 80%.
Wow.
Which is it's really nice because it is much faster, much easier for the staff to do. A lot less steps. You don't have to scan anything. You don't have to open mail. I mean, just the mail processing was a big deal, and mailing this stuff back to people. So e-recording, we love. It saves us a ton of money. So what it's normally defaults to, and you can change that around by going into preferences. You can set some things. But it usually defaults to name search, because that's usually what you're going to do. Okay? So you would go to name search and type in a last name. Now, you can narrow it down. Say you only wanted to see properties in a certain municipality. You go to that, click off that. Maybe this is an investor that owns a gazillion things, and you're looking for something that's only in the last couple of years. So you could put a start date here, so you don't have to go back and see stuff they've had for the last 30 years. And then there's a whole document list which goes down there. You have to scroll down if you don't have a big screen. You could uncheck the all documents that it defaults to and just put in what you're looking for. Okay. So if you just do a total search on a person's name, then you just put the name in and click search. you're gonna get like 100 and some things. No, only 68. I thought it was more. And the most recent thing was my commission from the governor. So you have to have Java. Almost everybody has Java, but every once in a while someone calls, I can't see anything. And they have like a really old computer and there's no Java, or Java's turned off.
What,
Well, there was a problem recently with Java, and I know Apple turned it off.
Oh, did they?
They
And for some reason, it's not loading right now. Oh, there it goes.
what's the difference in what you record in the recorder of deeds and the pathonetary's office?
Okay,
Are there
that's a
overlaps?
good question. We record mostly what's considered a voluntary type document, not normally court related. So deeds and mortgages, somebody signed the mortgage, they volunteered to have this go on record. The pathonetary is the clerk of civil courts. That's up for election this year. So you'll probably hear that again and again. The clerk of civil courts. So that's suits and judgments and tax liens and all that kind of stuff, which is an important thing when you're looking at real estate. And they unfortunately don't have any of that stuff online yet. You have to actually go into the office and search that way. They haven't taken up the parcel ID number thing, which they should. Actually, when we did this thing with parcel ID numbers, the law's on the books since about 1988 that the state said, recorders can do this system. And it was set up at that time. Most of the counties had really manual systems for their tax records. So if you did this parcel number application, and we do it today, you have to certify, make sure, is this really the right number? They can put any number on it. So in other counties still, the document doesn't come right to us in recorder deeds, it goes to the tax people, waits around for them to look at the number, maybe it's not right, then they send it back to you, and then back to them, and they certify the number, and then they give it to us. Some counties, Schuylkill County, the assessment office won't give it to the recorder deeds, they gotta send it back to you, and then you guys send it back in again. So when I came up with that we're gonna do this system, because it's just a much more organized way of looking for records, I said, I don't want to involve the tax people. I already explained the stuff where they're on the fence about updating the system. So we designed a system that actually sped up our recording process, rather than adding the layer of looking at this tax number. What we do now is when we record a document, most of the time if it's electronically recorded, that number's gonna come right into our data. If not, all we have to do is hover on it, click, and it's captured. That, as soon as that's captured, pulls the information from this old assessment office system, which is loaded into our data, checks it, and shows us what's the current parcel owner's name, what reference where their deed is recorded, book and page or instrument number, what's the acreage of it, what the municipality is, and the site address of that particular property. So all our recorders have to do is, 3 of those things match, we got the right number. But then what that saved us time was, before we would have to index the address. Well, when you're typing out a document, it might be North 11th Street, and they type it sometimes on 1TH, sometimes they type it 11th spelled out. Every variation of abbreviations for street and address, avenue and boulevard and whatever. So when somebody they'd always ask us, why can't we search by address? I said, because you're not gonna find what you're looking for by that address. So now what we do is, we don't bother with looking on the document for the address other than matching it up to make sure the number is the right property. Because people do try to transfer the wrong property. We just pull the data from the assessment file, and that's the address that we use. So at least it's all consistent throughout all the different tax bills, county bills, and what we have. So that saved us time there. The municipality and the school district, we would have to input in part of Wyomissing Borough, that's over, no, actually, part of what Wyomissing Borough is within two school districts. You have Wilson Schools and you have the Wyomissing School. Because Berkshire Heights was an old borough that was dissolved in the 50s, and it was in Wilson, and when they were absorbed by Wyomissing, that was farm area, like the Berkshire Mall, and they wanted to stay in Wilson because that had the agricultural school. So that's why it got stuck in Wilson. So we'd have to actually know what addresses are in this school and that school. Now, because we computerize this with the tax records, it tells us. We don't have to worry about that. Because we have to apply and send out the tax for transfer tax to the right schools, the right municipality. So by doing this, automating it, we're now allowed to charge an extra $10 fee. You might have heard the fees went up for recording. And typically, most counties that charge a $10 fee, it probably cost them $10 or $11 to certify it in the other department, who had to hire more people because they don't want to do anything more. So it didn't help other than make the records better. Here, because we designed it and put it all together and did it in like a modern method, you get to collect the $10, which subsidizes your tax bills, and it doesn't cost it. It's actually saving us money, which it doesn't happen very often. So I find really cool when I'm doing the budget. Okay, so this will show you the picture of your document. So you can go through there and look at all the details. You know, if it's a mortgage, that's where you're going to see how much the mortgage was for, what the terms would be, is there assignments of rents and things like that. And you can always go back and see what's the rest of your results. If you want, you can click on these headers and organize it by the type of document or by the date of the documents.
Now, for a fee, we can print directly from the
Yes.
system.
Yeah, you can search and look and read to your heart's content for no charge. But if you print, it's 50 cents a page. And then if you print, you can pay for that with a credit card. Or if you are doing this a lot, like the title searchers and some of the other law offices, they open an escrow account with us because it makes things go a little faster. And the credit card, when you use a credit card, it charges you an extra $1 per transaction. And you can avoid that with the escrow account. So we don't care how much is in an escrow account. A lot of times people send us $10 and it's there, and whenever they want to go in and search, you'll see, well, this is our fictitious county escrow account balance. It'll show your balance at the bottom of the screen. It says we have $369.96 in our account, which is just like what was left over of the funds when I balanced the checkbooks when I first got into office. Oh, does everybody know the previous recorder is going to jail? Everybody know that? Previous recorder, so when you catch it like on the news in May, or you hear half of it on a news report, you, oh my God, he was just here.
Yeah.
No, it's the
No, it's
previous
previous.
recorder, Ellie Antoine.
What had happened, or can you not say?
Oh yeah, I can say everything now. It's so
Okay.
nice that I can say it. For years I couldn't say it then.
Yeah.
So I sort of would say, hey, wait till you hear what. But when I first got, before I was even starting my term, they called me in to sit down and talk to really different people in the county. After I was elected, before you start, you get elected in November, you start January. And the auditors were there and they're saying, we really need to get in to see some stuff because we have these suspicions. We know something's going on. You know? And I was always hearing things about copy fee money, where she used to have copy machines you had to feed the quarters in, and no one had track of how many quarters came out. But that turned out to just be part of it. So what I did when I first got there is really scrutinized all the accounts. And then just start to scrutinize all the systems and procedures. And the first thing that kind of threw me off is the staff would hand me gobs of money. You know, people would put money on, they had print cards back then, where you would encode a magnetic card, sort of like a debit card thing. And she had this machine, we called it Ellie's Mac machine, where you could stick the card in, feed money into it, almost like an ATM. And
Reverse ATM.
and then it would encode the card. But there is nothing set up on any of these machines that encode the cards to tell you how much did you encode in a day. Well, that's the most obvious control method you would have, so your staff isn't stealing from you. But she didn't have that part of the system because she didn't want anybody to know, I sold $1,000 worth of cards today and I booked 500. So she had that going. Then her fee schedule, and this isn't quite all her fault, but I think she took it to the extreme. When I got there, I simplified all the fees. It used to be so many dollars for this document, and then a different fee for that document, and all these different fees, and then if you had more than 4 names, you had to add 50 cents a name, and so we eliminated a lot of that stuff, and the rejections went down. Well, what was happening before, the fees were so screwy that people just sent more money, and she would never refund money. Now, we don't refund money, we do it 2 ways. If you pay $10 or less too much, goes right on the receipt, forfeited overpayment, goes into the account, goes right to the account, subsidizes taxpayers. If it's more than $10, we send it back, reject it, you gotta send this the right amount. Her receipts just said change, and no change was ever given. Now, why did the thousands of submitters like say, hey, it says change, I don't have change, and start ranting and raving, call the newspaper? It's like, nobody did hardly anything. One credit union started to hound the commissioners about it, but then they really didn't do much. So what would happen is, she had this check swapping scheme where, let me know if I'm boring you with the details.
No, it's interesting.
Don't take these ideas and try them somewhere else.
Well,
This
this
is
is
our intermission from the meeting, by the way, so this is good. Unfortunately, you're doing both presentations.
Now it's good.
But this is stuff that I was like told not to say for years and years, because this started in 2008.
Yeah, it's been a
And it
while.
only she was charged officially last summer, and then a month or 2 ago she pled guilty, and then in May she gets sentenced. And it's already like a plea agreement, 6 months in jail, 6 months of house arrest, and 3 years of probation. And she pays back a pittance of restitution. We're still trying to get her pension now. So, she would have all of the money, all the recordings would have to go to this one person she had as a cashier. Okay, now that slowed everything down because everything had to go to this funnel to this one person, and she would have to go through it and do all the receipting. Then that document could go to the recorder, who could finally look at it. So they're sitting there waiting with nothing to do because she has to do the money, because she wanted it all in one pot. So then all that overage would be handed to Ellie at the end of the day. And she would make it look like, oh, she's putting this to each one of these companies. So she'd have a little slip. This was Century Abstract, this was First American, this was Sovereign Bank, whatever. You know. She could care less, but the person giving it to her thought that went into the envelope for that company. And why they never noticed that they put in $10 a day from each company, and maybe once, and her excuse was, well, when they're short, then just come to me. But only like 50 cents or $1 was usually coming out in a day. You know, where was it going? So, a lot of the times, there wasn't like the cash for that because they were paying by check. So if it was $56.25 overage, well, they find a check for $50 and maybe one for 10. And they give it to Ellie, and then she'd give them back $3.75, whatever the difference was, to make a balance. So then those checks would be accumulated. Then when there was cash come in, Ellie would cash the checks. You know, once in a while, my bookkeeper would say, "Do you have any checks to cash?" I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
You know, and then I would find out, well, this is what she did. You know, so people still to this day pay a lot of And it's usually city houses selling for $5,000, $10,000, and they'll come in with cash for transfer tax. And that can add up to a lot of money, 1% to 5% transfer tax in the city. So there's this cash that still comes in, even though I have like done everything I can to cut the cash down. Well, it was a ton of more cash back then. So she would just take these checks and cash them and cash them. Yeah. So she had the check swapping thing from the change or the overpayments. She had these, selling these debit cards so they could print from the machines. And then before that, she had the quarter machines for copying that no one ever knew how much went in and how much came out. Then she did some schemes with the computer system company that she had. And this is one thing that really bugs me. The FBI just kind of like, oh, I don't think we can do anything with that. I think this is the biggest one, biggest scene. After she lost the primary, before the end of her term, so between like May and the end of December of 2007, she had this great big project done with her computer company to take microfilm of 10 years worth of old records, because prior to 2004 or 5, everything was just on microfilm. Then they started to do the computer images. So she wanted to add those into her system. And the one part of the job was to load them into the computer system. So there was already a computerized index like this. But if you would go to that document, you wouldn't see anything. You'd have to go to the microfilm. You know, so basically, this was telling you where the microfilm is. It's on roll number, this, that, the other thing. Get that roll out, put it on a microfilm machine. So she had those microfilm images scanned and put into computer image. And they would have to, and they would be by the book and the page, which would be the same as the book and the page in the computer system. And then you'd have to run some type of computer script to make them line up to that document. No big deal. Just a little computer program, nothing, you know. I asked a couple companies when we were converting to a new system, if I gave you 10 years worth of images, like 4 million images it was, how much would you cost it, would you charge me if you would attach those? $5,000, $10,000 at most. She paid the computer company that did this, who she had handpicked, $610,000. Fair check, $610,000. But I know what happened. You know, it had to be, you know, here's for you and here you can give me back something later. So that's the story there.
Wow.
One of the things that you may really want to dig into on these things is rights of way. And that's where you have to do a lot of digging to see prior owners, what they gave. Okay. I have one that came up, something with the telephone pole. I don't remember exactly what it was. This was for a pole that was on my lot that used to have a med-ed light on it, and they took the light off, and the only thing on it is the telephone wire. So med-ed gave me the pole, and I had to give Verizon the right-of-way, put the wire, leave the wire on the pole. But you have a lot of right-of-ways for crossing this property. And if you want to subdivide it, you have to make provisions that that right-of-way still can exist. You know, whether maybe it's actually better that a road is going to be built, but sometimes there could be something, you know, like a gas pipeline. That's a big thing in the news right now is extension and addition of these gas pipelines. And we have a lot of them in Berks County, going back. I think the oldest one's from like the 1930s, maybe before that. So you can trace these back. I just did one for a farmer up in Tilden Township that was told by the gas company they couldn't put their barn within 100 feet of this pipe. And I look it up, and it was only 30 feet. So 15 feet on either side of the pipe. So there's all that stuff is recorded. You just got to do some extra searching. I had to go back probably 4 owners' names in that one to find it. So that could get a little difficult. But all the rights of way we have fully indexed into this computer system back to 1937. And before that, you can look it up by the one series of index books that took you up to the end of 1936. Any questions anybody has on what you can get out of the recorders? What you mentioned about prothonotary is really important, because a lot of times people are looking at sheriff sales and other types of properties, and maybe you're just looking to list something and you want to make sure it's going to close, there's really enough money here. If they have tax liens against them, or water and sewer, or anything like that, that's going to be in the prothonotary. And I'd like to see people start saying, hey, I want access to this online, because they're just not making any attempt to do that. They have it available in a certain, I don't know if it's all their data, but you have to subscribe to it. And really right now, I think only attorneys and title companies are doing it. And it's $300 or $400 a year just to have access.
Well, I'd like to use it to screen tenants for landlord-tenant complaints.
Yeah, that's where you're gonna see that type of thing. So if that was accessible, then you wouldn't have to go into the prothonotary office, you know. And what I think of this, the reason I don't charge, there's some counties that charge a subscription fee, or you can do it by the minute or by the hour, or by the year, to get on and look at their records. Okay, the statutes and the laws say that all of our records have to be public to everybody in the county seat, courthouse. Can't charge people for coming in, if they want to use the computer, went from books to computers. You couldn't charge because it's a computer now, because you don't have the books anymore. Well, I look at that as, well, what's an office now? It's a cyber office, so I'm not going to charge for people to look this stuff up. Now, we did take some special precautions, because the mortgages used to have a lot of social security numbers on them. Back in the 90s, the banks went bonkers, even into the 2000s, with, we want the social security number certified in every single document, so every signature line has social security number. So what we did was, we had one of the data processing companies, I forget if it was Data Tree or one of those, they wanted to buy our indexes, and they did a trade. So I traded what we probably would have sold for $25,000 for a project that my lowest estimate of having done to remove the social security numbers was $200,000. I thought, well, I'm ahead of the game. And they would take all the images of the documents, run it through a very high-tech scanning process, and they would give us the number of that document that found a social security number, even handwritten ones. So it was that good of an optical scan. And then we tested it to make sure this is really, we'd give them certain things that we knew of 100 it had 10, and it came back 10. So we were really confident that it worked. And then they gave us the list of those document numbers, and then we were able to have our computer people take that list and pull all those documents into one computer queue, where our recording ladies, when they didn't have new work to do, they just, next document, it would find it for them automatically, and they do a process where they call it redaction. Where it saves 2 copies, one you see with a black line, and one that we have, because we have to maintain the permanent whatever was given to us. So I felt that made our records more safe for the ID theft people, because that's what a lot of them knew. PNC Bank, between the years of this and that, would put social security numbers on. So they do a search for mortgages of that lender in different counties and find all those. So before we had that done, I didn't have those mortgages viewable on the website. They were sealed. And that would create a problem, because searchers needed it across the country somewhere, and then they would It would be more work for us, because then we would have to manually get that for them. Once that project was done and we could make them all accessible, our calls dropped, and we sold more copies. So it's like a win-win situation for us. Anybody else have any?
You said you keep hard copies of all the original documents?
No.
No? Oh, okay.
No, this is how it worked. Originally, I would have never got this job because you had to be able to write real good with a pen, with a quill. So it was every of the old document, you'll see these in here. You could do a deed search for old stuff. Deed.
You can't do by address though, can you? You have to use the.
No. I can do by address because I know I'm only doing it to maybe find a specific thing. But at one point, the address search got out there. We had it activated. It wasn't supposed to be on the website, but it got on there by mistake. And we were finding people like type in the address. And these are searchers who are, paid to do a search. I got 3 things. Well, that address changed from a RV number to a street number, and then it changed to a different street number. And they're searching the one. Address search is just not reliable. That's why we don't have it activated anymore. But if you wanted to do a deed search, in the 1760s. You can see these. The recorder would get the document in on like a big parchment or pigskin.
That was quick.
And now we've gone through and indexed from 1752, when the county started.
Is Conrad Widener?
Yep, up to about, I think the lady who's doing this is like 1802 right now. Okay. Now, that's like, whoa, that's over 50 years, but it's like 12 books, maybe 15 books, because it was so little to that time. So in the first 50 years, there might have been like 15 books. When they stopped making printed deed books in 1986, if you would have make them equivalent in the number of pages as those, there probably would have been about 3,000. And then from 86 to date, if you take those pages and say they were the same size as the average deed book, and they were just microfilm or then images, we would be way over 10,000 books. So there's no way to keep it in book form anymore, as things just got bigger and bigger. And then a 4-page mortgage from 1985 into a 20-page mortgage broke bigger today. But yeah, if you would just pull up one of these, you'll see the recorder had to sit there and handwrite every single word for them.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow. Look at that.
Then in the 1890s or so, sporadic into the early 1900s, they started typing. And then they would have some form books for deeds and mortgages where most of the language was printed in. Well, a deed is pretty much whatever they want to write it up as, But they had a form book that had specific language, and they would just write the details into this form book. Then about 1954, they were all typed up to that time. They started to take the actual document, lay it down on a table in a dark room with a microfilm camera above it, and take a picture of every single page. And that was made into rolls of microfilm. So from the 50s up to 2004, that was it, microfilm. And then Ellie, the one good thing she did, she switched to scanning, and then we took scanning to a higher level when we put in our new system.
I'm amazed at how clear that is.
Well,
That's incredible.
yeah. One little thing on here, if you click in the document, push the W, you're gonna get a full.
Now, if you could click view full document, view full page. Is
Yeah.
There's a full page.
Yeah.
So you can
There's
see top and
various
bottom.
different buttons and things, but there's a shortcut with the W. And it'll bring
Well,
up.
what I was gonna say is if you, can you make it, should we see the whole page?
Maybe not on this screen
Look at
here.
your top tools, there's one that says full page. Your tool's right there, one of those is full page. It's an X, it looks like an X, no. Next,
Zoom
top to
in
bottom,
100%.
right to your right, there you go. One more,
That one.
one more,
Put the window.
next one over,
Oh, go over.
yeah. There you
There
go.
you
Yeah, to
Okay.
me, that's too small.
It is too small.
So you can-
I'm just gonna share a cheat, you can cover your ears.
Okay.
At this point, if you do a print screen,
Don't do that, that's illegal, and the
Oh, you can't?
FBI come visit you.
how is it illegal?
Oh, there you go.
Well, it's to capture the view if you're trying to see something.
He's at the next
Yeah.
meeting, stay
Yeah.
here.
He's after you,
Yeah.
man.
Actually, sheriff does not have those kind of duties.
I was joking.
Print screen is illegal, how is that illegal?
Because this is, the beginning tells you this is copyrighted, yada, yada,
Okay.
yada. It is maintained by statute that we are allowed to charge 50 cents a page.
So it's
And
a value add.
amazingly, almost everybody does pay. Once in a while, we'll find somebody that doesn't know the difference in the print, and they walk in the door with their print shots.
Well, and it doesn't look right, because it's got all this stuff around
Yeah.
it. So
Had an
it's not a
engineer
perfect
come
It's not
answer.
a perfect, right.
I said, did you do print screen? And there are, well, we're working on the system. We have a way of making like draft across here,
Oh, that would be good.
okay, and then you can't,
Then, yeah.
unless you pay for it. But a lot of our users are looking at these old documents, and they don't wanna be looking through draft.
Right.
Yeah.
So I keep asking the computer vendor, okay, can we say from 1950 on update, it has draft? But before that, it doesn't, and they haven't figured it out, or till they get to looking at it, I forget to pest them for it.
Yeah, and we're not doing it
Yeah.
like all the time. If I have somebody who's, for example, they want to list a property, like you said, and I want to make sure that they really are the owners.
Yeah,
I just want to see that first page, and that just goes in my file. So it needs to be printed.
that's really annoying, you could get big, big trouble. I have a
Little do we know. So
I have a research lady who constantly sends me print
print
screens.
screen stuff.
But what she's doing is, she'll go through here and she'll say, this references a prior deed and they have the page number wrong. Would you please put a comment in there so the next person searching knows that that page number's wrong? Because it took me 2 days to find the right one. So I figure she's helping clean up our 200-year-old records. I'm not gonna beat her
Right.
up on the screen. Yeah, any other questions, anything else you wanna know?
Is there an easy way to get tax liens? Actually, that's what I was.
Yep, that's another thing that, no.
Okay, all right.
Once we have this new assessment software, that's gonna pull in tax collectors, tax claim bureau, the treasurer, all these things together. And that'll allow like an online tax certification.
Is there a charge for that?
For a
Look it up?
certification, yeah.
Well, to just look it up?
To just look it up, no, you can go into the tax claim office and look it up.
Oh, yeah, that's
Yeah.
going into the.
That's pain.
office, right? Okay.
That's why another thing is like,
So we're looking at possibly 2 years for this?
yeah,
Okay.
for more. But you know what, no one seems to complain about those things.
I do, I just complain silently.
But you have to, like, send it. Facebook Commissioner Weinbach,
There you go.
tell him, hey, we wanna see this stuff online.
Yep,
He will start pushing for that stuff if people tell him.
I'll let him know.
He's the only one that's really helped me along with getting this tax ID number thing, you know, and getting this moving along so that we can get the assessment office.
Well, there's efficiency in all that,
Yeah,
and
well-
cost savings, and he's all about the cost
Okay,
savings.
we have to do, by the end of this month, all of our departments have to give a review of all their operations to the chief executive guy, the guy with the commissioners. How could we, what do we really have to do? What could we eliminate? Could we get efficiency? And my whole thing is, okay, first of all, we've done all that stuff.
there's a few things I wanna do to make it more efficient. But the data transfer to update the tax records, the tax people start by printing out every single deed and manually looking through it, and then inputting again manually the names of the new owners and their mailing address. They have one. They just have to load the data up to it. They don't wanna do it. They want us, so that's a great efficiency.
Hours and hours of
Yeah,
of
a lot
people
of
time
people
plus.
time, you know, you hate to say, you know, that means we don't need 3 people over in that department. But, you know, they'll probably transfer to some other department, or it'll probably
Well,
be,
the increase for typos and
yeah, well, that,
rekeying
Yeah.
entries and.
yeah, we'll have people who'll call saying, my tax collector says, I need to file a new deed because my name's misspelled. I'm like, deed's perfectly fine, the tax record has it misspelled. And the tax collector doesn't even know, all she has to do is look that up, tell the tax assessment people, here's the deed, fix it, and they fix it. But there's lots of stuff like that. They do this review and mapping, they tell me that they don't transfer based on the names or the parcel number, they base it on the description. It's impossible. You can't like, oh, that's a description for XYZ property. No, you're looking at the parcel number, you're looking at the name, and then you're looking, does it match? Okay, but 99.5 or more percent of all deeds are just a rehash of the description. Why do you need to look at it? Well, when we instituted some of our new procedures for e-recording, there's a question. Does this deed change the description of the parcel in any manner, yes or no? Yes, explain why. They only have to look at those.
The changes.
Just look at those, that's it. Why do you have to look at every single deed? But that's how they're, I really think it's, you ever hear where they say, there's lots of people in government positions who, if they really investigated, they find out their job was eliminated 20 years ago, but they just keep coming into the office and they sit there all day and they go home. I kind of think that's what happens in some of these
I used to sell high-tech scanning systems
Oh.
for an organization out of Schuylkill County, and part of it was evaluating the workflow.
Yeah.
And so, what do? I print this report. Who do you go to? I make 10 copies and I give it to all these people. Okay, so I go to each of those 10 people. What do you do with this report? I throw it away. I don't even know what it's for.
Yeah.
And 8 out of 10 of them don't even look at it. And one of them
I'm
looks
a
at the first page.
people person. You ever see the movie Office Space?
Yeah.
Well, one of the other things, just to wrap up with, getting back to a little bit with Ellie, was I did like a efficiency analysis of the whole office and all the procedures and all the steps and why things were bogging down. Because one thing really annoyed me when I got into this office was I'd see every so often a person sitting there doing a crossword puzzle, reading a book. I said, well, why is that? Well, because the work is backed up over here and they have nothing to do. That was okay with Ellie Antoine, who is like a monster and nasty to people and manipulative and just an ogre. But you could sit there and do nothing. Well, I think she put up with that because the inefficiencies in the workload allowed her to skim the money. So she liked those backlogs, and she liked things having to go to one person, so there's one cashier that she had one pot of money instead of 10 pots of money to pilfer from. So the work would come in, somebody would have to unpack it, because it was almost all mail. Then it would all go to this cashier, who would make sure the money was right. It all back up there. Then it would slowly trickle out to the reporters. The recorders would then just make sure it was recordable. Then, that, like it was signed and notarized and all that. Then it would go to the scanning people, who would scan with 1 or 2 big scanners. Then it would go to the stamping and sticker people. There was 2 ladies, all one did was stamp, one receipt page. Well, what, no, she would hold the document under, it would print a barcode. It had all these procedures, you know. The recorder would have this label maker, it would put one label on the first page. Then throughout this process, we'd get to this lady who would put it under a scanner and it would print the receipt page. And then she would stamp it. I said, why are you stamping this and everything? Why don't we like stamp one copy and make a copy, 500, and load this in the paper hopper, and then just put it at the right spot where you know you're always, oh, I mean, she would get carpal tunnel syndrome, so then she'd be out workman's comp for. Then it would go to the lady who would put it under the money and would put this whole roll of stickers, like if it was 15 pages, it would print 15 page stickers. And she would have to put stickers in there. Well, we have it imaged now. What was imaged is what was recorded.
Well, the image didn't even have the sticker on it, because it was happening in a different
It was
position.
done later, yeah. So, it just made no sense. So we now print, as part of the processing, the cover page. It says this is official cover page. There's 15 pages in this document, do not detach. That's it. And what's the, and then you could throw that on the ground and get it all mixed up, or lose it, burn it, whatever. It doesn't matter, because what's in our image is what's real. That's it. Okay, all right.
One last question. Since you got a lot of important data, I mean,
Oh.
I have to think the integrity of that data and the ability to back it up has to be pretty critical.
Okay, we have multiple backups.
Okay.
And our ultimate backup, well, there's two ultimate backups. There's the one that the real usable kind, which is our data. We have a computer software package from Property Info. Used to be called Record Fusion. It was a smaller company. They were bought by Property Info, which is owned by Stewart. And their data center now is in Texas. So right here, where I'm getting this from, this is coming from Texas. So all of our data is instantly loaded to the website. And then every night, to save bandwidth in our county internet, the images upload to that.
Okay.
The images
Yeah.
are
That's all
uploaded
exciting.
every night. We have in our office the servers and the backup servers for what's being done right that moment. But the true backup is to the data center.
What happens when Texas secedes from the Union?
They have another place in Colorado.
I don't think they're going anywhere.
Then we still have to do a human readable backup, which is microfilm. But now the microfilm is just input to the microfilm burner from the digital images. So that's done like on a monthly basis. All of our documents get burned onto, I think it ended up being about 5 or 6 rolls, little cartridge things of microfilm. And they get shipped out to Iron Mountain out near Pittsburgh in this great big limestone mine shaft that's supposed to withstand nuclear blast. And humidity, temperature control, supposed to last 500 years. But you don't want to have to go to
Right,
microfilm.
right. No.
We had, the one client was, for the scanning software that we did, was an insurance. They worked for it, they were hired by insurance companies. And they would go into an office and scan everything.
Oh, yeah.
And it needed to be, OCR, so it needed to have character recognition, needed to be indexed. And certain forms would have a number in this corner, a number in that corner, so the scanning software would look for and recognize those pieces,
Oriented, yeah.
orient it, scan it, save it as a particular group or file or batch, and then ship the data over to India
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of that.
overnight, where
Yeah.
they actually would sit there and spell check and correct the data and make sure the index actually matched what they saw. If there was a question, is that really an L or a 1, those kinds of little keystrokes, and then by the next morning, it was a perfect match and back in the States.
Lancaster County, yeah, same system as ours. But their they have fewer recorders. But all they do is like, yeah, it's recordable. You accept it. They don't put in any names, they don't do any data. It gets supposedly shipped, they tell me, to someplace in New York, but I'm sure it's being farmed out overseas to be indexed. and then they get it. So their stuff is a couple days behind, which, you know, you're saving some money, but I'd rather, like, I mean, we've cut the staff down from 24 to 14, and we make a healthy profit for the county. All our expenses down to even the overhead stuff that's not like paper costs, but they assign us like so much for square footage use of the building and the human resource department and all that kind of stuff. We earn all that plus about $1 million. So $1 million from recording fees means $1 million less real estate tax money, because that's the only place that they can get it from. Oh, these images here, I wanted to mention. Those really old documents, we have the books for those, okay, which is not the actual document, because they didn't have copiers. I had to explain that to a lot of people. No, it's not a real copy. You know, it's not the real thing, it's a transcription. We took all those for probably like the first 100 years, yeah, the first 100 years of books, and scanned them page by page on a really good flatbed nice scanner. Most of them with a flatbed, some you could put through a sheet feed. And that's why they're so nice.
Yeah,
Except for a handful of books that got water damaged, or somebody tried to preserve them by putting this, it's almost like you took a real thin tissue paper and adhered it to the page. This is another, recorder maybe 50 years ago that was sold at bill of goods. Because most of these books are like, they're really in good shape. I have ones that are crumbly that nobody did anything to, but these are in good shape. But this tissue paper turned brown. And it's really hard to get a scan. I think we can scan them in color, but we can't put them in here yet.
An image enhance and then
Yeah.
resave it.
Yeah. So we'll have those bad books saved in another part of our website. And then we'll probably put notes on here saying if you can't read this image, go to here. Okay, sorry to ramble. I tend to-
Yeah, this has been great information. I'm very impressed.
Thank you, Fred.
Very impressed.
Commercial Industrial Council, thank you very much for coming.
You're taking good for you.
Yeah.